Ooh, baby. It's a rare Sunday special of your source for daily fantasy hockey news and gambling breakdowns, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We have arrived at the Pacific Division breakdown. Predators taking on the Canucks, Oilers toe-to-toe with the Kings once again. We're breaking it all down for you on today's episode.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're rolling now, baby, and the Sunday edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast has you covered on all of the Pacific Division breakdowns that you need to know. Shout out to all the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. We see and appreciate you out there. Steele and I could not be doing this without y'all. Make sure you drop us that 5-star review and smash that subscribe button. Really, really appreciate it, Steele. Let's give back to our listeners and viewers once again. Metro, covered. Atlantic, covered. Central, covered. We're on to the Pacific, my friend. Some very intriguing matchups, not like the rest weren't. We're going to be taking a look at each of them, X factors, best bets, who wins, how many games, and of course, some Sunday picks for the head tops. These episodes have been getting long, pal. Lots to cover. Straight over to you, as always. Canucks, Predators. This is a very intriguing series, my friend, one in which I actually don't know where you're leaning. So hit me with your take. You're on mute.
The mute button once again gets me. I'm back, baby. But look, this is a very interesting matchup, in my opinion. And I sort of alluded to where I was going with my prediction. I'll say that towards after the X factors, but I'll just set up the stage between these two teams. Okay. The Canucks took the season series 3-0 and outscored them 13-6. Vancouver Canucks had the slight advantage, and I mean ever so slight advantage in goals for, goals against, power play, and PK. They do lead, but very slightly. Looking at the 3 games they played in the regular season, they played them back in November, December. These teams haven't seen each other the last 4 months. So I don't think the Canucks really got the Nashville Predators at their best like they have been the last 2 months, and that's what I'm really feeling going into this first-round matchup. I'll start with my X factor for the Vancouver Canucks, though. This is a team that's only made the playoffs once in the last 8 years. They lack playoff experience. For many of the players on their roster, this is their first or second time making it into the postseason. So I'm looking towards a guy with the most experience, and it might be funny to some people out there, but it's JT Miller. I'm looking towards the guy with the most experience in this matchup.
I don't think it's funny. Miller. It's just you love this guy.
I love this guy, and I'm not gonna get into why I love him, like I've done in the past, but we're definitely gonna be talking about JT Miller this offseason going into next year's fantasy league. We're gonna have to bring that topic back up, but this is a player who went to the playoffs 7 straight seasons from the age 20 to 26 with the Rangers, Lightning, and his first year with the Canucks. He's now 30. He's now 31 years old. He has 44 points in 78 career playoff games. Again, he was a very young kid, but he had 6 straight seasons in the postseason. And he's coming off the best season of his career with 103 points. He has 284 points in his last 242 games. 40 power play points, 198 shots, 217 hits, 61 blocks, 19.1 shooting percentage, and 9 game-winning goals for the Vancouver Canucks this season. He does everything for them. He is their best player, and I know they have Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, but he has been their best player over the last couple of seasons, in my opinion, and especially this season. He's got the clutch factor. He's got the experience. He's been in his prime the last 3 years. Be the leader. Be the guy the team looks to when they need something special. I know Quinn Hughes is the captain. I know he's a leader. I know Elias Pettersson's a leader, but you got to look to the guy with the most experience, the guy who, he's got the age difference on them. He brings that veteran experience. So I'm going with JT Miller. He fills all the peripherals. He does everything for them. Continue that in this first round against the Nashville Predators.
Absolutely here for this take. I really like that you're bringing up the inexperience, but I think that could possibly be said for some of the players in the mix in Nashville as well. Of course, Ryan O'Reilly, UC Saros, Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg, those guys have been there and done that. But one of the big reasons that this team has been successful this season, at least in the regular season, the Luke Evangelistas, the Sherwoods of the world, the Tommy Novaks, the guys who have not done it in the postseason, were really influential on this team during the regular season. So that's number one for me. Can they translate that into the postseason? Because the inexperienced thing can go both ways. And number two, you mentioned all those statistics, and they are very close in a lot of them. One that stood out to me, however, was goals against per game. Vancouver 5th, Nashville 14th. And when it comes down to how this Vancouver team has been getting it done, actually, when you look into it, it's been their defensive play and the blue line, Ronek, Myers, of course, Quinn Hughes, guys stepping up and Steele. When you look into their numbers even more, when they didn't play the defensive game, the offense wasn't good enough. And the goaltending, at times, we know we like Casey DeSmith, we like Thatcher Demko, but still at times they let them down as well. So for me, it's not even an X factor. I can get to that in a second. But just in terms of general in this series, it's going to have to be that blue line for the Vancouver Canucks holding it down, because we've seen what the Nashville Predators can do, and they have arguably been the hottest team in the NHL over the past 2 months.
Yeah, and I'll throw Nikita Zadorov on top of that as well.
There you go. Thank you.
When we talk about the Nashville Predators, they're very pesky, very physical. One of the most physical teams in the NHL.
Pesky.
I'm not sure how much the Vancouver Canucks bring to the table when we talk about the physicality, because Dakota Joshua, Nikita Zadorov, JT Miller, obviously, maybe Sam Lafferty at times, but other than
Teddy
that,
Bluger, I don't know.
There's just so much more physicality, and that plays a big difference in the postseason. But the way the Nashville Predators have been playing the last couple of months, I mean, this is a scary matchup, in my opinion, for the Vancouver Canucks.
Sure. And look, I think that's a fair thing to be said, because this Canucks team was really good in the regular season, but it's a pretty big turnaround from where they've been over the last 2 seasons, right?
Yeah.
And there is a lot to like about them. And let me just spit out my X factor then, Steele, because this kind of goes in the same vein. Brock Besser, sure. Pettersson, of course. Quinn Hughes, of course. How about a guy who finished the season red hot, and I really do think fits into the mold so well? 4 goals and 3 assists for Connor Garland over his last 5 games down the stretch, Steele.
Very interesting.
He is a very streaky player. Maybe it's a lot to expect from him to be an X factor, because he's never really done that in his career.
Yeah.
However, he's proven that he can score big goals for them in the regular season. Is that going to translate into the postseason? I think you're going to have to see someone in the depth scoring for the Vancouver Canucks step up. That would have been my cop-out X factor. So if I have to pick an actual player, I'm looking at Connor Garland, a player that down the stretch, Steele, was red hot.
Yeah, and again, another player from the Vancouver Canucks that's only been in the playoffs once in their career.
There you go.
With the Arizona Coyotes. So again, the lack of experience for me is playing a big play, a big part of where my prediction, where I'm alluding to. It's to me, is again, very tough matchup for the Vancouver Canucks. I'll get to my X factor for the Nashville Predators right now. And I know we've been talking about goaltenders a lot, but it's got to be UC Saros in this position. He's played the most games with 64 games played this season, even more than Georgiev. The Predators have relied on him more than anyone on their roster. His record has been very solid, 35, 24, and 5 with a .906 save percentage. Again, he's been he's struggled at times this year, but we've seen the best out of him over the last couple of months. And this is a goaltender, again, to your point, he's played well in the playoffs, but he's never gotten out of the first round. It's been a weird ride for him when you look at his playoff history, because at first he was the backup for Pekka Rinne for 3 years, and he never actually started a game. He would come in halfway through to relieve him because Rinne just wasn't at his best. Then he started to get his chance as the starting goaltender in the postseason in back-to-back years, and couldn't get out of the first round. And then last year, a couple of years ago, he missed the playoffs due to injury, and then they missed the playoffs last year. So it's been a weird playoff history for this guy, but when you actually look at the numbers, he brings it. He's got great statistics in the postseason when you look at the numbers. But again, the Nashville Predators compared to Vancouver's missed the postseason the last 3 to 4 years. Right. Nashville's been in the postseason. The only time they missed was last year, and they just can't seem to get out of the first round. So for me, it's got to be UC Saros. He's got to stand on his head, and he's got to make the big saves for this team that can really take it towards the Vancouver Canucks, even though it doesn't seem that way from the regular season series.
And I think their last point that I want to make here before we get to break, before we come back with our series best bets, predictions, I got an X factor on the Nashville Predators side of things. Oilers, Kings, Sunday's bets. Let me just say this. The Vancouver Canucks headed into this series, I think the pressure is all on them, in my opinion.
Yes.
Big season, right? Expectations are higher. The Nashville Predators, sure, they come on fire, but there was a while there that they were looking like the season might be cooked. And now they're playing with fool's gold here a little bit, I would say, Steele. So that's something that I think factors into the lack of experience as well. So there might be a little bit of a trend developing here. Also, though, shout out to Ricky Tocchet, because this Vancouver team is built a bit differently mentally.
Yes.
So there's another one in the column for the Vancouver Canucks. We'll have more in the win column for you right after the break. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. It's playoff time, baby. NBA, NHL, and of course, we got the MLB in full swing, and FanDuel is where you can bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to dingers to dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic W. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, go check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever free 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube. You can also find them on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, bringing you the biggest and top stories of the day without all the screaming from Fox Sports or ESPN. You don't have to turn down the volume. You get all the content at the right pace, at the right volume on Locked On Sports Today's YouTube channel. Also find it on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Continuing the conversation before we move on towards the other division matchup between the Edmonton Oilers and L.A. Kings. Flip, the X Factor, your best bets for this series and season series prediction.
Very quickly, Ryan O'Reilly is the X Factor for me on the Nashville Predators side of things. And look, yeah, he's their #1 center. He's their leader. You could make a lot of points. The one that only needs to be made is this guy is a playoff beautician with winning caliber in his back pocket. In 75 career postseason games, Steele, 65 points for Ryan O'Reilly. The springtime hockey hits. My man takes his game to another level. This is perhaps the biggest piece that I think, again, bringing up our boys, that the Leafs will miss this postseason. Ryan O'Reilly is a postseason beauty. He is my X Factor for the Nashville Predators. My best bet for this series is the Nashville Predators to take the series. And that's going to go into my prediction as well. This one, Steele, went back and forth for me. I had Canucks in 6. I had Canucks in 7. And then I did some more reading. I did some more digging. And the conversation you and I just have has swayed me even further. Give me the Preds in 7. I know I'm saying a lot of 7-game series, but I think that's just how juicy these matchups are going to be. Hit me with the Preds in 7. That's also my best bet, and that's my X Factor, Ryan O'Reilly, who I think, Steele, there is no one in Vancouver's lineup that can match up against O'Reilly. You can say your points about Elias Pettersson. You can say your points about, I know, JT Miller. That might be the closest one in terms of winning and getting it done. I just say the edge goes to O'Reilly, at least in the center dot, but that's no disrespect to JT Miller.
No, 100%. I agree with you in the face-off circle, and the better experience, the guy who brings the leadership qualities that you want out of this type of player. So I agree with you wholeheartedly there. Even though I really like JT Miller, I agree with you as well, as it's going 7 games. I also have the Nashville Predators in 7 to win this series. As much as that pains me to say, as much as I do want the Vancouver Canucks to go on, I just feel like this is a very bad matchup for the Canucks.
Yeah.
I feel like the Nashville Predators are going to get the best of them a couple of times, maybe on the road. But I also have the Nashville Predators in 7. My best bets, series total, 7 games at plus 198. Again, nice. I can see it going both ways, but my final prediction will be the Predators, but it's going 7 games in my opinion at plus 198. That's a really good one. This one's a little bit off the topic, but maybe could be one of those depth scoring X Factor type of guys for the Vancouver Canucks. I'm going to go with Elias Lindholm, 2+ goals in this series at plus 250. It was plus 250 or plus 300. I'll have to look up the odds for tomorrow once we post. But I mean, I think he could be a very good X Factor for the Vancouver Canucks in this series and could maybe sway them to winning this series as well. So those are the predictions for the Nashville Predators Vancouver Canucks series. Those are the X Factors, prediction, best bets. Make sure you continue listening, subscribe to the channel. Let's move on, though, to the LA Kings, Edmonton Oilers. Now that I'm thinking about it, we've had every single series in the Western Conference go 7 games.
Yes, we have.
In the Central, we just switched who we think would win the series, but we've had every single series go set. We have gone the distance.
Not
wondering what you have. Yeah, okay. I guess, wondering what you might have had for this series. I think we might have the same outcome at the same games, but over to you, my friend. Edmonton Oilers, LA Kings. Who's your X factor for the Edmonton Oilers?
Right away, Steele, like there's obvious lean to go into the cage, right? Like saying Stuart Skinner really needs to establish himself and take this team on a run. That would be perhaps the biggest cop-out of all the X Factor cop-outs that you and I have thrown out there. So I thought about this a little bit, and I know Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had 104 points last year, and everyone was talking about him in fantasy. Some of our peers on other podcasts talking up Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in a big way, and I was just kind of like, 105 points? No. What he did this year is what I expect from Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in that 60 to 70 point realm, but that means he still has to be an effective offensive piece. Not talking about fantasy. You and I will break all of that down next year. The playoffs are here. He underachieved this season. He really did. And given the fact that he gets some looks on the power play with the likes of the players that we know this Edmonton Oilers team runs out there, I know Evan Bouchard is also out there taking a lot of minutes. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has to be an X factor for me, Steele, because you know the Edmonton Oilers are going to get theirs. But you know the LA Kings are probably going to get theirs too. So somebody is going to have to do something that's not named Draisaitl and McDavid. And I'm looking at Nugent-Hopkins for a big opportunity here to put the bad season that he had, quote-unquote bad season, underwhelming season behind him, and make a big difference in the postseason for this Edmonton team, Steele, that I think is going to go through this Kings team in 6 games. I'm just throwing mine out there for you just to digest.
No, I absolutely love that. I guess I'll say that as well. I also have the Oilers in 6 games, and we'll kind of break down the prediction, but I'll let everyone know my X factor. And you mentioned his name as you were talking about Nugent-Hopkins. And for me, it's got to be Evan Bouchard.
I like it.
He jumped from 40 points to 80 points in 1 year. He's a plus 34, 220 shots, 105 blocks, 71 hits. He fills out all the peripherals like we've talked about. And he's produced in the playoffs as well. 26 points in 28 games in 2 career playoff seasons. For me, it goes hand in hand with what I've been trying to talk about with, last episode when I was mentioning Thomas Harley and Miro Heiskanen and Cale Makar, having that star defenseman on the blue line who can really just set the bar to another level for your franchise moving forward and going into the postseason. And I think Evan Bouchard has really put himself in that conversation with some of these other guys. Even Noah Dobson has put himself in that conversation with Miro Heiskanen and Rasmus Dahlin. And, I'm not going to go all the way to Cale Makar, but he's on that trajectory. And
I like
all these defensemen are going that way. And at the end of the day, he's still very young. He's 24 years old, just like Miro Heiskanen. And again, look at when we look to him over any other defenseman to make that play on the Edmonton Oilers roster right now, he's the go-to guy. It's not Darnell Nurse. It's not Matthias Ekholm. It's not Cody Ceci, obviously. It's Evan Bouchard on the blue line, on the power play, in the defensive zone. Obviously, Ekholm and Darnell Nurse get theirs done all the time as well defensively, but he does it on both ends of the ice on a very high level. So for me, it's got to be Evan Bouchard, because he's at that point. He's 24 years old. He's proven it he's 80 points in the regular season. He's proven it in the playoffs. I'm going Evan Bouchard as the X factor for me.
I love it. And I think there's something that's popping up here, right? We know the Edmonton Oilers, they're an offensive juggernaut. 4th best power play. They scored the 3rd best goals per game at 3.59. They can't play that run-and-gun style in the postseason. They can't do it prolonged anyway. They need to score more 5-on-5, and I think that's another key for me in this series. And the PK needs to be better, because when you're looking at the LA Kings, they have the best penalty killing unit in the NHL, I believe. Let me bring that up. I just had it there. 2nd best penalty killing unit in the NHL. One of the best power play units, Steele. Something has to give. That won't be our hot takes, which have a lot more coming right up after the break. I got my X factor for the Kings. I got my best bet for the series. You got some best bets. We got Sunday's picks. I am ready for this one. Let's go to break.
Let's get it. This episode is also brought to you by Sleeper. It's playoff hockey season, baby, and we couldn't be more excited. But I need to remind you all that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. But it's not just hockey. You can also play NFL, NBA, MLB, CFB on the Sleeper app. And all you have to do is pick whether studs like McDavid, McKinnon, McCarr, Hellebuck, all these playoff beauties, if they will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100-time bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Locked On Fantasy Hockey fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all the love and support you show us Monday through Friday. 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. Flip, if you don't mind, I'd like to just get off my X factor for the LA Kings. And I know I've talked a lot about, I've tried to spread the love between forwards, defensemen, and goalies. I know I've talked a lot about goaltenders, but I've got to mention one more goaltender as an X factor, and it's Cam Talbot for me. Okay. 27-26 on the season, a .913 save percentage, a .250 goals against average. The stats are great. The record's not great, but the stats are pretty good for Cam Talbot in the regular season. This is also another goaltender that hasn't gone deep in the postseason, but he has produced excellent numbers in the playoffs. A career .921 save percentage, a 2.51 goals against average. But again, the record doesn't speak highly of the value. He has a 15-16 record in the playoffs and 31 career starts. So this for me, again, I know you said, and I agree with you, the LA Kings are going to get their own. Kevin Fiala, Adrian Kempe, Quentin Byfield, Anze Kopitar, and Drew Doughty, they're going to get theirs. Cam Talbot needs to stand tall, needs to stand big and be a brick wall at times for this team. Again, going up against one of the best power plays in the league. You're going up against Connor McDavid. You're going up against Zach Hyman, Leon Draisaitl, Evan Bouchard on the power play. This is their third consecutive season going up against the Edmonton Oilers in the first round. This is a nightmare matchup for the LA Kings. They don't go any farther if Cam Talbot doesn't play at his best.
Love that breakdown, Steele. Cannot agree with you more, even though you have been highlighting a lot of goaltenders. I'm fine with it. You mentioned a player, though, that I think has to be equally as important, and he has been the heart and soul of this team, aside from Anze Kopitar, for the better part of 2 decades, and it is Drew Doughty. Drew Doughty turned back the clock this year. He's going to be 35 years old, Steele, and he leads the team in ice time per night. He is still logging over 25 minutes of ice time per night. He's bringing quality on offense. He shoots the puck well from the blue line. 135 shots this year. I know that's down from what you expect from his career. That's okay, though, because 142 block shots, 110 hits, 50 points as well. And he plays with edge, 44 penalty minutes. Steele, this is a guy who's finished top 10 in Norris voting in 9 seasons in his career of 16 in the NHL, including winning the Norris one time. He gets it done in the postseason. He's a winner. Shout out to a good Guelph Storm alumni. I got to give the OHL some love.
Got to give the shout out.
Drew Doughty is going to be an X factor. Will he be the only one? I don't know, but I know he will have his fingerprints on this series. And if the Kings have any shot at winning it, he will have to be an X factor.
And he'll let his voice be heard. He loves the chirping. He loves the banter out there, especially in the postseason. Final prediction for this series, we already mentioned it. Edmonton Oilers in 6. I believe you have that as well. So Oilers in 6. That is also my best bet for this series. Oilers to win series 4-2 at plus 420 right now. On 420. Absolutely ridiculous out there. What's your best bet for this series?
Points leader for the series. No value in Connor McDavid, even though that kind of makes sense. Last postseason, a guy named Leon Draisaitl led the league with 13 goals scored. Season before that, led the NHL in assists through the playoffs with 25, even though both times they didn't even make it to the Cup final, and he still finished with the most in both of those categories. He is also a player, Steele, in 49 career postseason games. Draisaitl has 77 points. So for him to be the series leader in points, and I'm getting plus 450, and I got to pay minus money for Connor McDavid, look, this is a very good value bet. It's a best bet as well. If this team is going to roll through the LA Kings like I expect them to, roll through 6 games, the Kings are still going to get theirs. Leon Draisaitl is going to have to be just as good, if not better, than Connor McDavid, because we know that this isn't a one-headed attack in Edmonton. It's got to be the two-headed monster rolling, and I think you're going to see that from King Leon.
Absolutely love that pick. I'm throwing that on. I'm piggybacking off you a little bit here. I'm throwing that definitely in the best bets category that we've talked about. Let's get over to big time bets for Sunday night, though.
Sure.
4 games on the schedule. I've got 3 picks from 3 different games. If you don't mind, I'll rattle all 3 of them off. First pick, Rangers on the puck line at plus 122. Okay. I'm going heavy on the Rangers.
Yeah, you are.
Again, I have them sweeping this series. I have them coming out game 1, guns a-blazing, absolutely firing on all cylinders. Rangers puck line plus 122. Second pick of the game. I actually like this to be a little bit of a, it's not technically a low-scoring game, but a close game between the Predators and Canucks. I could see a 3-2, 4-2 empty netter. I'm going over 5.5 in this matchup at minus 120. Okay. I love the over 5.5 in this game. The last couple of games, the last 2 or 3 games have gone over in the regular season. So I like that one. And last but not least, Lightning on the money line on the road at plus 138. That's going to be my lock of the night as well. Yes. I don't know what it is. I'm just really liking this Lightning team going into the postseason against a Florida team that they've dominated in the playoffs. So Lightning game 1, money line plus 138 is my lock of the night.
Then giddy up and here we go, my friend. Same game parlay time. From that game, first pick, Lightning, money line, plus 138. The last time these two teams met at the end of the season, and I know it was 1 game, but I still need to talk about it because the Tampa Bay Lightning took it to the Florida Panthers 5-3. That was in a response, though. The game before that, Florida Panthers hung a 9-piece on them. Yeah. So the last 2 games between these two have produced nearly 20 goals. I believe it's 19. So I'm going to take the over as well. Over-unders over the first few games are very much playing with fire. However, I'm feeling this one. I'm going to tease it down to 5.5. And I'm going to take the lesser odd because it's a same game parlay. And I'm going to round it out with my lock of the night. A guy who has got it done for this team every single playoff season. You know, it's not Nikita Kucherov who's done it too.
Oh,
it's El Capitan. Yeah. Steven Stamkos is a fire under his bonnet right now. He had some disrespect. There was rumors out there they didn't want to re-sign him. I think that's a mistake, and I think he's going to prove it in a big way. Give me Steven Stamkos anytime point. And if it's 1.5, I got to take over. I'm going to take over because it goes in line with my Tampa pick, and it goes in line with the over. So Bolts plus 138 on the money line. Give me the over 5.5 and the Stammer anytime point.
Absolutely loving the same game parlay in the Battle of Florida. There's just hockey to be had all weekend, all month long. We couldn't be happier. It's round 1 of the playoffs, baby. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, though, go check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. You can also find them on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. They bring you the top stories of the day, covering 24/7 with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. So make sure you go subscribe to the channel. Check them out on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. Subscribe to our channel as well over here on YouTube. And thank you again so much for tuning in for today's Sunday special with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again on Monday.
Peace.